I am very, very excited to introduce to you nationally known note buyer. She is one of the country's most recognized on the subject matter and an expert on discounted notes, seller financing, but she's a hometown girl. She's our very own state of Ohio, and she's very, very familiar with our Midwest market, which is more important than listening to these gurus on the East Coast, West Coast, which don't have anything to do. So help me welcome Donna Bauer.
One second. It's on. It's okay to go now? Okay, good evening, everybody. Actually, great evening. You know why it's such a great evening? Because today's the first day of the rest of your life. You know that? For some people, it's not. They're doing the same thing they've done for the last 20 years, you know. But I really commend you all for being here. This is a totally awesome group. I told Anna, she is gifted at this. Like, she is one of the best group leaders, and I hope you all know how blessed you are to be in this group. She is a wealth of information. I love all of the networking and everything. You have a very, very good group here. And it's good to be back. So I'm excited to share with you right now because the time to do notes is right now. I've been doing notes for 35 years, and there's never been so much opportunity, and well, that's not quite true. It's really good in a downturn, several downturns, as I was talking with Vern about. But whenever we have a market like this and things are really crazy, that's the time to do notes. This is the time when I make the most money with notes. And the reason is that notes are so flexible. You can do so many different things with them. And you can, once you learn how to work with them and you learn like how to discount them and how to calculate your yields and just to be creative with them, you will be able to buy and sell properties that you couldn't have done otherwise. Because if you learn to do the creative financing, which involves notes, then it opens up all kinds of avenues to you. And so that's why I'm excited to be here. I want to talk about several things tonight. One is how to flip notes for quick cash. The thing is, we want to get to the point where we're doing the creative financing, but you got to start somewhere. And most people need cash now. Even if you have money, can't you always use a little more cash, you know? And so one way of doing that is to flip seller carryback notes. And that is also a really good way to learn the basics. And once you get the idea of how that works, then you can kind of spread out and start using some more advanced strategies in your real estate buying. So we want to do that, and I want to show you why this is a great time. For those of you who have cash available, you can get great returns, and notes are a great way to accomplish it. And I also want to show you why this is the perfect time for these creative strategies. Now, we can use either performing notes where the people are paying on time, or non-performing bank notes, okay? Either one. You might think, why would you want to buy a bank note? Well, because you want to use that as leverage to get the property. And that's one of those creative strategies that you can use in order to expand your portfolio. So if you're wanting to build a portfolio of properties, then taking advantage of non-performing notes would be a great way to do that. Now, the big thing about notes that really attracted me to them years ago was notes allow you to control the property without owning it. When you own the property, you own the headaches that go with it. You have all of the security of the property, but you don't have the headaches. And when I started out, I was buying real estate, about 5-unit buildings, some single families, and I was dealing with the tenants, the trash, and the toilets. And as you heard from Anna, it's a lot worse now than it was back then. And it was just more than what I wanted to deal with. So when I found out that I could invest in notes, even without my own cash or credit, then I could invest in the notes. I've got all the security of a real estate investment, but I don't have to deal with 3 o'clock in the morning phone calls because the tenant's too loud, or overflowing toilets and all of that kind of stuff. So for me, that is why early on in my real estate career, I switched to notes. Now I will tell you that even now I have rental properties, and over the years I've bought and sold rental properties, because when you see a good deal, you take advantage of it, whether it's a note or a property, you know. But without a doubt, it is the notes that have really sustained me in every market. And it is the notes that has allowed me to really make lump sums of cash, way more and with far less effort than if I had bought the property itself. So today we're going to focus on making quick cash. I'm going to show you how you can build wealth with notes and how you can get properties really cheap. And like I said, we can either do the performing or the non-performing. And the reason you would use the non-performing is simply for leverage to get the deed to the house, okay? Now, a lot of people may think, well, which one should I do, performing or non-performing? It really depends on several things. The non-performing, typically you can make more money on them, but not necessarily all the time. But they take a lot more time, hands-on time, plus sometimes it might take years to get a non-performing note worked out. And consequently, they are a much greater risk. Whereas if you are dealing with the performing notes, which is where I recommend you start, those you can get very, very nice profits. They take very little time, and if you do it the way I show you, it's really virtually risk-free, okay? And you don't need your own cash or credit to get started. So here's just a few reasons why I prefer notes over properties. First of all, you never own the property. Secondly, no tenants, trash, or toilets, and no bed bugs. Have you guys dealt with bed bugs? When it's horrible. Do you know that when my kids were little, I used to say, "Good night, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite." I didn't know they were real. And then I had a rental property, and when the people moved out, it was infested with them. And I felt bad for saying that all these years to my kids. But with notes, you also don't have rehabs. You don't have to worry about building orders. There's no carrying costs, no negative cash flow. And what I really love is you get full-time profit for part-time effort. When I started out, I had 4 boys, all grown now, and they were little. And I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I didn't want to desert my kids. I didn't want to have to go out of the house to work. And notes was the perfect vehicle. I started doing notes off my dining room table. And I would make more money back then, just getting started. I made more money than friends who had master's degrees. And I'm working, with 4 little kids running around, do you think I had a lot of time to devote to my note business? It really was part-time for me back then. And the great thing is you really can make amazing rates of return, and I'm going to show you real deals that I have done. And people, they can't believe it until they see the numbers on it, and they go, oh my gosh, this really works. And like I said, you don't need your own cash or credit. And that means that you're going to have plenty of time and money to live your life. Doesn't do you any good to have plenty of money if you don't have any time to spend it with your family or however you want to spend it. So when I started out, my husband was making minimum wage. We had 4 little kids. I was babysitting. It was 9 kids, 4 of my own and 5 others, literally to make ends meet, to help put food on the table. And I would lay in bed at night and say, Lord, Lord, show me the pot at the end of the rainbow. And he did. Wrong pot, but shows you got to be more specific when you pray. but he did show me the pot at the end of the rainbow. It was during those times that I learned. I was trying to do real estate, and I happened upon notes. And I had an attorney who took me in. He taught me the business, and I haven't stopped since. And so it truly has been a pot at the end of the rainbow for me. So without further ado, would you like to know the fastest, easiest, safest way to make money in real estate? Anybody? Okay, that is to flip a note, whether it's performing or non-performing. Non-performing is when they're not making payments. Typically, that's considered to be non-performing when it's 90 days late. But either way, just think about it. It's so easy because you're not dealing with the property. You're only dealing with the paper. And any time that you can put together a good deal, I don't care if it's on a car, a boat, a house, or what, if you can find a good deal, get it under contract, you can always sell it for money. And the same is true of notes. So you can flip a note in 30 to 60 days and easily make $10,000. If I needed money in an emergency for my family, I would go out and I would find a note. And then I would find an investor and I would just flip the note to an investor. Many people think that you have to have a list of investors. I want you to know that I started out at the Cincinnati RIA group, and I had about 4 or 5 investors from that group. And that's all I needed, because the notes pay off. And then they say, hey, I got $70,000, this just paid off. Do you have another note? Or, hey, I told my brother about this and he wants to get on this too. So please don't feel like you have to have a list of investors. You have everything that you need right in this room. When you start networking with each other, you'll find you've got something he wants, he's got something you want, or she, okay? So, before I give you an example of this, I want to make sure we're on the same page with the terminology. A note is a promise to pay a debt. The note says, I'll pay you $100,000, 10% interest, $500 a month, whatever the terms of that loan is. Now, a mortgage is what provides security or collateral for the loan. So if the borrower doesn't pay on the note as he agreed, then at that point, you would use the mortgage and you would foreclose, and that's what allows the lender to take the property and then he can sell it and recoup his money, okay? So you hear people say, I buy mortgages, but I promise you, they're not buying a mortgage unless they get the note too. Other people say they buy notes. Now, you can buy notes that are unsecured, but I sure wouldn't do that, okay? Everything that I'm going to share with you, the notes are all secured by real estate, because ultimately, that's what makes them safe, okay? So let me show you a typical example of how flipping a seller carryback works. And even though you may not want, this isn't your ultimate goal, if you want to learn notes, this is the easiest way that I can teach you. Because if you get a handle on how this works, you can start applying it to all different scenarios. So let's say you have Sam's seller, and Sam owns this house free and clear. And let's say it's worth $600,000. Do I need to adjust this microphone? Is it okay? It seems too hot and I'm hearing a lot of feedback. Are we good? Okay, thank you. So Sam owns this house, and he owns it free and clear, and it's worth $600,000. And Bauer Well, before Bill gets there, Sam puts it on the market to sell. And every time he thinks he's got it sold, the buyer winds up not being able to get a loan. Anybody have that problem? You know, and so his friend tells him, hey, you know, why don't you carry back a note? What are you going to do with the money? Why not leave it invested in the house at a good interest rate? So he starts advertising this house, owner financing, you know, I'll be the bank. And Bill, Bauer, gives him a call, and Bill goes over, looks at the house, falls in love with it, and says, look, I just sold my own house. I've got $150,000 that I can give you as a down payment, and I'll pay you 10% interest, and I'll pay you $4,000 a month, and at the end of the 10 years, I will refinance and pay you off. Is that a good deal? Would you do that if you were Sam? That's a pretty good deal, 10% interest, and shoot, nowadays you might even get 12% interest on it. Well, you got to be careful because you don't want to go violate usury if you're selling to an owner-occupant. So 10% is kind of where I'd stay. So they strike a deal, and Sam sells the $600,000 house to Bill Bauer, okay? And Bill gives him $150,000 in cash, plus a $450,000 mortgage. So was this a good deal for Sam? How many people think this was a good deal for him? Sure, because if you look, he got a very quick sale of his house right away. He's getting an above market rate of return. He's got some tax benefits because it's an installment sale. And overall, he's got a nice, safe investment. Because if Bill doesn't pay as agreed, he's going to take his house back and sell it to somebody else, okay? So that's a great deal for him, so he's very happy. So let's say now that 2 years go by, and the $450,000 note is paid down to just over $443,000. Well, what happens if Sam is tired of waiting for his money? He got really tired here. But that's what it seems like when you need the money and you can't get it. It seems like that, you know? And so let's say that Sam came upon this great deal where he just needed $375,000, and this was going to be an opportunity of a lifetime. He's all excited, but wait a minute. He's still got another 8 years to wait to get his money. So it just so happens that Sam got a letter from Donna dealer here that said, Dear Sam, I understand you're receiving payments on a mortgage. I pay cash for mortgages. Give me a call. I'll tell you how much cash that I will give you today for your mortgage. So he calls me up. I'm the lady with the money. But really, I didn't have any money, okay? I'm using somebody else's, but he doesn't know that. So he calls me up, he says he's looking for $375. Sounds like a great deal to me. So we strike a deal, and Sam agrees to sell me the $443,000 balance that's owed on the note, and in exchange, I give Sam the $375,000 in cash. He takes the money and runs. Okay, he goes about his business, does that other deal that he's got going on, and doesn't look back, okay? So what happens to Bill? Does his position even change? No, the only thing that's going to change is he's going to start making payments to me, okay? So he makes payments to me, so that's the only thing that changes. All the terms of the mortgage stay the same. So is this a good deal for Sam? Well, let's look. He got a down payment of $150,000. He's collected $96,000 over the last 2 years, and now I just gave him $375,000. So that's $621,000. How much was he selling the house for? $600,000. Is he happy? You better believe he is. And the reason is, it's not always about the money. It is about the timing. When people decide that they need their cash, for whatever reason, life happens. They get married, they get divorced, they want to go to school, they start a business, whatever that might be, they want it now. And timing, a large part of the time is what drives these deals home. So he was thrilled because he could sell this right away. So this was a great deal for him. Okay, is it a good deal for me? How many of you might think this might be a good deal for you to get into? Let me show you why it is. First of all, I just bought a $443,000 asset for only $375,000. So my net worth just went up by $68,000 when I bought this note. I have built in $68,000 of profit. If Bill Bauer comes in and wants to pay off the loan, maybe he sold the house or he refinanced, I don't just get my $375,000, I get the entire $443,000, and I realize that profit right away, which is very important because not only, maybe I should mention first, so when I buy this, I wind up getting a 13.25% yield or rate of return. Why? If he's only paying 10%, how can I be making 13.25%? It is because there are two profit centers when you buy a discounted note. There's the 10% that Bill is paying, but there's also this discount that you build in. And it is that discount that allows you to make more profit. So the higher the discount, in other words, the less you pay for a mortgage, the higher your yield is going to be. And that is the secret of why you can make so much money doing notes. It's like this extra little profit center that most people never even take into account. You know, this is why I prefer to buy discounted notes than to do private lending. Because when you start buying them at a discount, which is the common way that in the marketplace people expect to sell their notes at a discount, it really increases your yield and your opportunity. So an important concept that you might want to jot down is the less you pay for a discounted mortgage, the higher your rate of return. So you'll always want to pay as little as you can. Keep that in mind. Okay, so going back to my deal, the problem is, I told you I'm babysitting for $1 an hour. And I didn't get paid for my own, so that's for $5 an hour, you know? I don't have $375,000, so what am I going to do? I am going to I'm going to flip it, okay? And I am going to use Irene investors' money, okay? And this is very, very cool. And this is why you can do this with none of your own cash or credit. Now, this slide here is the most important slide I'm going to show you tonight, because it is the secret of how you make money flipping a note, okay? All you need to do is find an investor who wants a lower rate of return than what we call your buy rate, the yield you would get if you were buying it with your own money. So in this case, we have this under contract to buy for $375,000. And we said if I had my own money, I'd actually be making 13.25. Well, it just so happens that I was mingling out in the hallway, and I talked to Irene Investor, and she's tired of investing in properties. She's tired of all the headaches and all the laws changing and all this stuff going on. She says, shoot, if I could get a little bit higher rate of return, I would switch to notes in a heartbeat. Well, if she wants, let's say she wants an 11.5% return, that's not unusual. But look what happens when if she wants an 11.5% return, that means she's going to pay $410,000. Do you see? I'm buying it at a 13.25% return. I have found somebody who wants a lower rate of return, and that means they're going to pay more than what I am. So in this case, just because she's looking for an 11.5% return, I make $35,000. You think we should do that deal? In a heartbeat. And so if you start thinking about it, think about the flexibility. I mean, there's some people that don't even want anywhere near 11.5%. What if she only wanted 8%? Okay? And there's a lot of times people want to sell notes, and 9 out of 10 note sellers have no idea of what your yield is. They go strictly by, I got to get rid of this note, how much will you give me? And many times, they'll take a whole lot less than what you would expect. Okay, so you always, when you're talking to them, you always want to try to find out what they're looking for. Don't be the first one to mention a number, because it's probably too high. Good chance it could be too high. Okay, so you say, well, this sounds great, but where am I going to get the money to give to Sam? How am I going to buy it to begin with? Well, you're going to use Irene Investors' money. And there are 2 ways that you can do that. The first way is with a simultaneous close. Now, perhaps if you've been around for a while, you've done some flips of properties where you've done a simultaneous close. Anybody done simultaneous closes? Now, you can't do those so much anymore if you are flipping a property. But are we flipping a property? No. We're flipping the note. So therefore, we can do a simultaneous close. And a simultaneous close is where you close 2 transactions at the same time, and you use the proceeds from the second one to actually fund the first one. I'll show you how it works. So we would have Irene Investor wire her $410,000 into a title company. Your title agent is going to set up 2 closings. The first one would be Sam selling the note to you for $375,000. The second one is you flipping the note to Irene for $410,000. And your title agent says, "Wow, Donna's going to make $410,000 when she sells this." So, and Irene's already wired her money to the title company. Does she need my $375,000? No. What she does is she takes $375,000 of Irene's money, and she uses that to close for you to buy the note from Sam for $375,000. So now you own the note. Now that you own it, she closes on the second leg where you sell the note to Irene. The note you just bought with her money, you're going to turn around and sell it to her, and you're going to make $35,000 in the process. Pretty sweet, isn't it? And I got to tell you, when the attorney told me to call a title company and set this up the first time, I thought, I can't do that. They'll think I'm trying to scam somebody. But this is done all day long. Banks do it, investors do it. It is a common way to do business, but you can't do it with properties anymore. But this is a great way to flip a note. Now, there's another way that has its pros and cons, and that is an assignment of contract. How many of you have assigned a contract when you're flipping a house? Lots of people have done that. You can do the same thing with a note. So in this case, Sam has agreed to sell the note to me for $375,000. I could sell my position to Irene Investor, and Irene would write me a check for $35,000, and then she would step into my position, and she would buy the note from Sam Seller for $375,000. So she still got $410,000 invested in it. It's just how you structure the transaction. So the thing is, if she wrote you a check for $35,000, what does she now know that you probably don't want her to know? She knows your profit. And so I do this when I'm working with students, because when you use my coaching program, I believe in full disclosure. We'll work together on doing a seller carryback note, and you'll negotiate the best deal that you can with the note seller. I'll do the best I can with my investors, and then we close it, we split the profit 50-50. Well, because I'm doing total disclosure, it saves money because I only have one closing, and it's a lot easier to do an assignment of contract. But if you're flipping a note to an investor like you've never used before or something like that, then you probably want to use a simultaneous close so they don't know how much money you made. So that's something I bounce back and forth on depending on who I'm working with. Okay, so the question is, do you want to be Irene investor or do you want to be Donna dealer? Or maybe you want to be both. If you came here tonight and you have your own cash, then you want to be Irene or Ivan investor. You are going to buy the notes to hold using your own money, and you do this because you want a nice, safe, high-yielding investment. But on the other hand, maybe you're like I was when I was starting out, or maybe you've already got your money invested and you're just looking to expand. But if you do not have cash to buy, then you want to be Donna dealer. And you're going to flip the note, you're going to use other people's money to buy it, and you're going to put a lump sum of cash in your pocket. Do you see the difference? Okay? And the neat thing is, you can go back and forth. I mean, when I've got the cash available and I see a good note, I'm in. I'm an Irene investor. But there's lots of times I see so many notes, I can't buy them all. So I kind of cherry pick the ones I like to keep for myself, and the others I flip to an investor. So I go back and forth depending on what the particular situation is and whether I want that note or not. So the deal is, and I think some people some people miss this. You start out as Donna dealer. If you have no money, you can quickly make money by finding seller carrybacks, and I've got a complete marketing program on how to do that. The easiest way is through direct mail. You buy a list, you send out postcards or letters. So when you find a note, then I offer you a 6 months, easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching. So you buy the list, you do your mailing, when you get a note, you fill out a submission form and send it over to me. That's when the coaching starts, okay? I am going to evaluate the note. I write it all out. You see all of my numbers. I write out exactly what you say to the note seller. And I work with you on how much do we want to make on this? You know, are we going to make 5,000, 10, 15? What do you think, you know, we should go for? And so then you will work with the note seller, okay? And if you want me to, I'll get on the phone and negotiate it for you. I'm right there with you the whole way. And then I prepare the note purchase agreement and all the documents, and you're basically the liaison with the note seller. So you're going to call them up, tell them what we need, you send that over to me, then I line up an investor. Might be a bank or a financial institution, might be a private investor. Then I will do all the due diligence. I get an appraisal, title, work to get the credit report, or a lot of times the investor will get the credit report. I want to be clear on that. But then I orchestrate the entire closing. And meanwhile, you're following right along with this, and you're learning on a real deal where you're going to make half the profit. It is a great way to learn how to flip a note and make money at the same time. So start out flipping the note, and then you start making, you made $35,000 on this deal, and maybe you make $50,000 over here and $10,000 over here. It's not long before you can be the investor. Okay, and that's how you get, can we all agree we want passive income? I mean, that's what we want. We want mailbox money. Here's how you get it. And I don't know of a faster, easier, safer way to do it than this. I wanted to tell you about Phil. Phil's one of my students, and on his very first deal, he made $396,000 profit. Can you you imagine that? Wouldn't that be a great day? You know? What it was, the secret behind that is the larger the note, the larger the profit. He went out and found a $2 million note. And he didn't have $2 million, but he found an investor, and he flipped it to an investor, and that was his profit on his first deal. So imagine, now he's got $396,000 to buy notes with. I mean, he could buy a bunch of notes, or he could go out and buy a $600,000 note, because he's going to buy it at a discount. And then when that pays off, then he'd have $600 to work with. Maybe then he'd buy a $1 million note. Now, I started out doing that, but I wasn't working with $300,000. I was working with $3,500. And I had that much in my self-directed IRA when I got started. I bought a $7,000 note. That paid off. I got an early payoff on that, so I turned around and bought a $12,000 note. When that paid off, I bought a $20,000 note. And I haven't stopped since. But it's because of that discount and getting early payoffs, which I'm going to show you in a second. It's an amazing opportunity to build wealth very quickly and easily. Okay, so here is an example of how to build wealth. Let's say you have none of your own money, because a lot of people are starting out from scratch. Or like I said, your money might already be invested in something else. This is actually Kurt's deal. Kurt was a student of mine. He came to one of my Note Buyer academies, and I gave this as an example of how he could make a lump sum of money. And he just made up his mind he was going to do this deal. And he lived in Texas. He went back to Texas. A couple months later, he calls me up. He says, Donna, I have a lady. She's moving to Europe. She's divesting of all her real estate, and I got her to agree to sell me this note. It was a brand new note. It was had $71,000 owed on it, and she agreed to sell it to him for $46,000. Why would she do that? Well, one is because she wants to move to Europe. When people's situations change, they will sell low. But a lot of times, she had been in real estate for years. She made a lot of money off of this in rentals for the last 20 years. She's already made her money. She's just wanting to cash out. And that's when you can get some of these really crazy discounts. So he calls me up, he says, do you have a buyer? She's going to sell me a $71,000 note for $46,000. So I called an investor, an institutional buyer, and they said, well, it's a new note, so we don't want to buy the whole thing, but we'll buy 100 payments for $50,000. $50,000? So he'd make $4,000 up front. Well, that didn't seem too good to me. $4,000? But wait a minute. What happens to the last 80 payments? Where are those going to go? They're going to go in his pocket. That's a great deal. People forget about the tail end. This is called partial. So this bank, it was a mortgage company, wanted to buy 100 payments. They paid $50,000 for the first 100 payments. So, and he actually did this in his self-directed IRA. So he put $4,000 into his IRA, and then after they collect the 100 payments, then his IRA would collect the last 80 payments. That's another $45,000. Okay, and he doesn't have any money invested in it. And that's almost $50,000 he's making. But I got to tell you, if you're doing this in your IRA has to show consideration. So when I have an IRA deal like this, I simply have my IRA send $100 earnest money to the note seller. Now, they don't need earnest money, but in order to do it in my IRA, I send earnest money. That's my consideration. But think about this. He is putting $50,000 into his IRA. It's not even a contribution. It's profit from a note that he bought. Isn't that awesome? And if it's a Roth, and if you're 55 and a half or older and your Roth is seasoned for 5 years, you can pull that money out tax-free, which would be pretty sweet, okay? I mean, how many people would like to do that deal? Isn't that great? And now imagine if you did that on a routine basis. I have certain strategies that I really, really like, and so anytime I get a note that hits one of those are the ones that I keep for myself, and I put them in my self-directed IRA. Okay. So with a self-directed IRA, you can start with as little as $100 in your IRA. You can do anything I'm teaching you in the IRAs, and then just let the profits flow tax-free to you. And then you can keep using the profits to reinvest in the notes, okay? That is the fastest, easiest, safest way that I know of to build a retirement. I did at the challenge of a friend, he said, if I gave you $100,000, what could you do with it in a year? And it was amazing at how quickly I could grow that $100,000. That's on my website. You can look at that, that webinar. But when you start getting these early payoffs, the growth is phenomenal. Which is the next topic here. This is a note that I actually did. You can buy and hold for cash flow and then negotiate early payoffs. Think about this. If you negotiated that you're going to buy a note payable over the next 10 years, and you've got this $68,000 profit like at Sam and Bill's deal, what happens if 6 months later they pay you off? You were expecting to get the $68,000 over 8 years, but instead you get it in a few months. That makes your rate of return go through the roof. So on this one, I bought this note. There were 39 payments left. I bought $14,000 of the $25,000 balloon. So this is a partial. So when the balloon pays off, I get the $14,000 and they keep 11. I bought that for $10,300, which was a 30% yield. How many of you would like to make 30% on a real estate secured investment? When you start going out and looking for notes to buy, it's not unusual to lock in 25-30% returns without anything happening, just because the people want to get rid of it quickly and they're willing to sell for a lot less. So I locked in 30%. And then the Florida Department of Transportation calls me up and they want to run a highway straight through that property and wanted to know what was the payoff on this note. So 8 months later, I got the payoff. I made $6,000. My return jumped to 88%. Okay. Now I get that that's only $6,000, but when you're babysitting for $5 an hour, $6,000 was a lot of money. And you apply that to some larger notes, and you can see where this goes. Okay, here's another deal that we did, and this was one of my easiest 1, 2, 3 coaching deals. Rick is a student of mine, and he had done a lot of mailing to Texas. Texas is a hot place for notes, okay? And he came across this lady, I'll call her Miss Annie, and she was the type lady I said before. She'd been in real estate before it was popular for women to be in real estate. She owned properties, she was a landlord, she got tired of being a landlord, she sold the properties to the tenants and carried back notes. And so she was really in bad health. And she had this note that she wanted to sell before she passed because she didn't want her kids to have to deal with it. And so she says to Rick, look, if I can get $80,000 for this note, it's yours. So we gave her a little more than that so that she didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I should have asked for more. So she accepted our offer for $80,475. That's a 25% yield. So if I had bought that note and held onto it and done nothing else, I'd be making 25% on my money. Would you like that investment? Secured by a really nice single-family home. So we get this under contract, and I happened to have an investor who I knew was from Texas. I didn't know he lived a half hour away from the property. No joke. And he was an attorney, and he helped people to repair their credit. That was one of the things he specialized in. So he was very interested in this note, and he agreed to buy it for $95,000. The truth is, we could have gotten $100,000 for it, but Rick and I discussed it, and she was really on her. She died just a couple weeks after we closed. And so we agreed that he was ready to close, and so we would just go ahead with him, and we were happy with that. So we flipped it to him, and we made $14,525. That was our gross profit, so we wound up with about $13,000, which we split 50-50. So the cool thing is that before I sell to an investor, I always do a phone call, a borrower's interview, and I introduce the investor to the borrower. So on this call the night before we're going to close, I have an investor who says, "How's your credit?" And she says, "Well, my husband had a heart attack a couple years ago. We're still paying off medical bills." He says, "If I can help you to repair your credit and get a loan, would you be interested in refinancing?" Absolutely. Look what happened. He helped her to refinance 3 months later on a $95,000 investment. In 3 months, he gets a payoff of $117,000. Plus, he had the monthly payments. So he made like $25,000 or more on this. And he earns a 96% return. 96%. He went from 17% to 96%. And I hear people say, "That's just on paper." No, it isn't. He got $117,000 in cash that he can now go do something else with. I mean, it's just a fact. That's the way it is. It's math. It's just going to happen. If it pays off early, your rate of return goes up. Okay. I love early payoffs. I use those all the time. If I see a note that I think is going to pay off early, that's one that goes in my IRA. Okay. So an important thing to see here is when your discounted mortgage pays off early, your rate of return skyrockets. That's something you want to keep in the back of your head. Okay, is anybody interested in non-performing notes? Okay, got a number of people. Well, you can make good money on non-performing notes. A lot of community banks, the smaller banks, will sell their non-performing notes. Now, I'm not talking about the big five. They've already got hedge funds that buy their notes. But if you were to get on the phone and start calling some local banks and say, "Hey, do you have any bad notes that you want to get rid of? I'm a private investor." And I have friends that's all they do. They love non-performing notes, and that's how they get them. Back in like the 2008 era, during that downturn, I did a ton of non-performing. I mean, we would have a pipeline of 50 notes at a time. I will tell you, quite honestly, I do not like non-performing notes. I loved it back then, but I got burnt out on it. It is very difficult to work all the time with people who are down and out. It's great when you can solve their problem, but sometimes you can't. And so somewhere there's a balance. Personally, I like the performing notes because they're easier, they're quicker, and I just enjoy doing them more. But there's a lot of people that all they do are non-performing notes. So if you find a bank that wants to sell a non-performing note, you could buy that note and wholesale it to an investor for a quick $10,000 profit, or whatever it is, depending on the amount. Okay? You never even own the property. You just were in the right place at the right time, got the right lead, you were able to get this under contract, and then you could flip it to another investor. Or you could sit down with the borrower and modify that note before you sell it. Because if you modify the note, then if you, like, would you want to buy a note that you just know is in default and you have no idea what the borrower is going to do? Or would you want to buy a note where it's in default and the borrower has already said, if you can extend it 5 years and increase my interest rate to this or change the payment to this, here's my job, here are my W-2s, I can make those payments. So see, it becomes worth more. So that is one thing that you can do with the non-performing notes. If you're wanting monthly cash flow, the modification is the way to go. What you would do is on a non-performing note, you use a forbearance agreement. Forbearance means, okay, I'll stop the foreclosure that the bank had started, and we'll do this modification, I'll change your payments, you work out whatever you can with them, and you allow them another chance at staying in the house. And you can make really high rates of return on your money by doing this. And why? Because since the note is in default, that discount that you negotiated up front, it's way bigger than on a performing note. So because of that super large discount you're getting, that is going to dramatically increase your yields on the non-performing note. And it's a real win-win because you can help keep the homeowner in the house. You could also settle a non-performing note. You could buy a defaulted note and you sit down with the homeowner and find out what they can pay. At one of my academies, I had a 17-year-old boy who won a little second mortgage we were giving away. It was a defaulted note that was in a pool, and he won that note. Do you know at 17 years old, he made like $6,000 just negotiating a payoff. He hired an attorney, worked with the attorney, and made $6,000 on that note. Because if you've bought it for pennies on the dollar, then there's a lot that you can do with it to make it a win-win for both the borrower and yourself. If you want the property really cheap, you could just finish the foreclosure, but what I prefer to do is I try to get a deed in lieu of foreclosure. I go to the borrowers, and you would be surprised at the number of borrowers who they're just looking for a lay person that they can talk to. They're scared to death of bankers. They're afraid of foreclosure. So you knock on their door and say, hey, I own your mortgage now. Oh, just wanted to talk and see what you have in mind. A lot of times they'll just say, look, I just want out. I just want out. Okay, sign this deed. And you can even give them money to move if that will help your deal because you've bought the note so cheap. Okay? You really can acquire properties at substantial discounts. One thing that I want to tell you is if you are buying a pool of notes, and that is not something that I do. I worked pools for a while. I hated it. You can tell I'm real picky about what I do. I like things that are low pressure, fun, easy, safe. I don't like headaches, and pools are a major headache, okay? So, but if you are buying a pool of notes, you absolutely cannot talk to the borrower until after you buy it. That is a major privacy issue, and you will be blacklisted by all the banks, okay? If you use my way of locating the borrowers, it's a whole different story. Okay, I want to share an example real quick. This is one of my students who was at my academy. He did this non-performing note deal, which I thought was fantastic. He had found this note. It was on he found this $14,000, 14,000 square foot warehouse. And it had a potential market value of $784,000, and it was listed at $599, and then he noticed the price kept getting reduced until it was down to $199, and it just piqued his interest. And he looked at it, and he found out that this was a major can of worms. It was a real nightmare. There were liens on it, $150,000 in federal and state tax liens. There was a $190,000 first mortgage with a bank that was in default, mechanics liens, it needed repairs. The owner was in bankruptcy and divorce, and there were $45,000 in property taxes that had been sold at the county auction. Now, if you saw that, what would you do with that? Would you run from it? I don't want to deal with that. But I do have to tell you that these cans of worms can be a diamond in the rough if you're willing to take the time and go through it, which he did. So he started doing some investigating, and he offered the bank $1,500. I told him that's ridiculous. The bank declined, so he upped it to a big $15,000 for a $190,000 note. But guess what? The bank agreed. Are you kidding me? Why would they take $15,000 for a $190,000 note? Well, probably because they knew that those taxes had already been sold, that they hadn't redeemed them in time, so now that company was going to file a deed and take the property. So if they could get their legal fees back, they'd be happy. I don't know, I'm just guessing, but that would make sense. So he gets it under contract, and then he contacts an attorney to check on the deed situation. Now, he hasn't spent any money except for the attorney now. All he did was get it under contract. Calls the attorney, and they find out that the guy that bought the tax deed had failed to file, or the tax liens had failed to file the tax deed within the statutory time. That deed was invalid. Taxes were gone. They were no longer a lien. So that cleared the way, and the bank's under contract to sell him that property. And so there's no tax deed situation. So he verifies that all the other liens are going to be wiped out. He buys the note, contacts the owner. The owner is real nice. He says, look, I don't want the property, but I'll help you go through the foreclosure. He wanted it wiped out because he had the bankruptcy and things. And so it was a friendly deal. Jim foreclosed. He got a $784,000 warehouse for $15,000 plus $4,000 in attorney fees, with fair market rent at $550 a square foot of $77,000 a year for life on a $19,000 investment. Those are the kinds of things that you can do. And I mean, granted, they're not all like this, but you're not going to find any of them if you don't start somewhere, you know. I just thought this was a really great deal. So there's so many opportunities with non-performing notes. The sky really is the limit. Okay, in closing, I'd like to wrap up by sharing, this is my favorite deal. And this is my favorite deal. It's not the one I made the most money on, but it's my favorite because it was the very first deal I ever did. And I had gone down to the courthouse. This was when everything was on microfiche. This shows how old I am. But I go down and spend the whole day. I came home with 5 leads. And I'm going, this is too hard for me. I don't have time. I got to have my mom come and babysit, and I spend the whole day to get 5 leads. That doesn't even mean they're going to sell the note. And I was going to throw them away, and I thought, you know what? I worked really hard for these. I'm sending them a letter. I sent a letter, and this young guy calls me up. And he and his brother had inherited a free and clear 4-family from their aunt. It was valued at $114,000. And these 2 boys didn't get along. Daniel was responsible. He took care of the property, mowed the grass, painted, collected rents. He did all the work. David was a total bum. He couldn't hold down a job. He was on drugs. He was always in trouble. So Daniel bought out David, and so his half was the $57,000, half of the $114,000, and David gave him $25,000 in cash, so they create a $32,000 first mortgage secured by a $114,000 property. Is that a good deal? That's a nice, safe investment, you know? So 13 payments had been made. That's another great thing about buying seller carrybacks. They have a pay history. If somebody's been paying for a year or two, or they've put money down, or they've got equity built up in the property, they're much more likely to keep paying, okay? So 13 payments have been made. The balance owing was $28,000, and David wanted to know if I would give him cash for that, for those payments. So I made 2 offers. I said, I'll buy the whole thing for $20,000. Or, if you like, and by the way, that was a 21.5% yield. So if I had just bought that from him and did nothing, I would be making over 20% secured by a first mortgage with like a 30% loan to value. That's like unbelievable. So my second offer was a partial. I said, if you want, I could just buy the next 36 months of payments. I'll give you $12,000. That was a much higher rate of return, 28%. Which one do you think he took? Take the partial. They don't know what the yield is, because this way he can have his cake and eat it too. He gets some cash he needs, but he knows in 3 years he's going to start getting monthly income. So we strike a deal, and I sold those 36 payments to an investor for $14,222. I paid David his $12,000. My gross profit, less I had $450 for title and appraisal. My net profit on my very first deal was $1,722. And then I sent David a letter. Dear David, it was really a pleasure doing business with you. In fact, if you ever want to sell the rest of the note, let me know. I said, I would give you $6,000. No, $12,000. I lost track of where I was at. $6,000, I was right. I said, I'll give you $6,000 for the rest of the note. Now notice 6 and 12 is 18, but I had originally offered him $20,000. Because he split it in 2, he's only getting 18. But I put this in, I'll give you $12,000. Well, how long do you think it took him to blow the money that I gave him to begin with? Wait, I said that backwards again. I would give him $6,000 for the rest. I'd already given him the $12,000, okay? How long do you think that it took for him to blow $12,000? It wasn't long, it was like a couple months. I get a call from the Boone County, Kentucky jail. He was in jail, and I was his one phone call. He didn't call an attorney, he didn't call his mother. He knew he needed bail money, and he knew where he could get $6,000. Well, I got a quick title update. I got a lady, June Henderson, bless her heart, from the Cincinnati RIA Group. She was a notary, and she went with me to the Boone County, Kentucky jail. They literally locked us in the jail cell with him. And I bought the second part of his note in the Boone County, Kentucky jail. So if you ask me if I've ever been locked up, the answer is yes, but it was to buy a note, okay? So I bought the second half of the note. I sold that to an investor. And my net profit there was $3,600. So my total profit on my first deal was $5,372. That was 35 years ago. And that was when I was making $5 an hour watching 5 little kids. So do you see why this is my favorite deal? This was the life-changing deal, because when I closed that, it wasn't the $5,000. I mean, that was a great thing. But what was more important was I went, yes, this works. I did it this time. I can do it again. But you've got to close that first deal so you know that it works. And that's what got me rolling, and I haven't stopped since. It definitely was a life-changing deal for me. So I have put together a program to help you to learn to do the same thing. And you may not want to just flip seller carryback notes, but I cover lots of other things besides that. I cover private lending. I cover lots of different creative strategies that you can use for notes, like why you should use, I have an exclusive option agreement, which you can use to do your partials, which is a lot better than the way most people do them, because the SEC doesn't like partials. So I've come up with a way around that, I hope. I'm not an attorney, I have to say, but I've had several attorneys look at this, and I believe what I have is really good, and I have not had any problem with it. Anyway, so I have my Original Note Buyers Online Academy, and it is your one-stop for everything notes. What I have done, I have so much educational materials that over the years, people didn't know where do you start. You know, because I got Sam Seller in 20 different books, you know. And so what I did was I took all of my material that I have put together over the years, and I very carefully chose the best of the best, and I've put it all together in a very organized way that is easy to follow, it's efficient, it's the quickest way that I know for you to learn how to do notes. And that was all online. And it's in a great format. Are we able to quickly get online? I might need some help with this. Let me see if I can do this real quick. We had it set up before, so hopefully this will work. And if, yeah, here we go. Okay, let me make sure that it's refreshed. So this is the Online Academy, okay? Now let me just show you how easy it is. The first part is the fast track to flipping seller carrybacks. This whole section here is an introduction to notes, flipping the seller carrybacks, how to use the easiest 1, 2, 3, how to use your financial calculator. And notice here, so each section, I have a little video, like a 2 or 3 minute video explaining what you'll learn. And then you can go down here, and here's the courses: how to flip a note, how to find performing seller carrybacks, how to talk to the seller, what does a perfect note look like, how to evaluate a note, how to get it under contract, what's your due diligence, what's your closing. And whichever one of those you want to look at, you just click on that, and then everything is on video. You get the video, the audio, and then most of them have either a downloadable printout of the slides or an actual manual. So everything is all click and go. And so it is a great way to learn everything. So this is the Online Academy. The advanced strategies using your IRA, doing notes outside of your IRA, like using a trust. I have a special trust agreement if you are holding notes outside your IRA. Then we've got the partial purchase, the option agreement, your own private lending. Here's all the tools that you get. You get a direct mail template, trifold brochure template. All these are marketing things. I've got a series of role plays that you can listen to learn how to talk to the note seller. You get all of my library of forms, and that's all the forms you need to do notes for both performing and non-performing. I have my evaluation spreadsheet all digitized, and you get a website template, so you can get that up and running right away for a very nominal fee. And then in addition to that, you get all my legacy courses. Okay, these are courses that have been really popular for many years, and you get basically everything I've done. And it's all on one website like that. I'm sorry? That's what? What is the website? It is thenotebuyer.com, but you will have to buy it to have access to all of it. Okay, so let's get back to that. Okay. Okay, here we go. So in addition to access to the website and all of my legacy courses, you get 6 months of the personal coaching with me. So just to review that one more time, what it is, it's you working with me. I don't have a whole staff of people. I don't pay someone $10 an hour to talk to you. I do notes. That's what I do. And so when you find a note, you follow my marketing program that is in the course, you find a note. When you do, you fill out a simple submission form, send it to me. I will evaluate the note. I write it all out so it's easy for you. You can present it, or if you need help, many times I get on the phone and I'll negotiate the deal with the note seller if you want me to do that. So then I will write up the contract. You're the liaison with the note seller. I'm going to do everything on the back end, all the documents, all the due diligence, find the investor, set up the closing, and then when we close, we split the profits 50-50. It is an awesome way to learn notes and make money at the same time. So I already mentioned you get all access to all my legacy materials, and whether you're a beginner or advanced, you will love it, because I have it, all of my stuff, it expands the entire gambit. Okay, so you're going to learn all the basics of evaluating, calculating, and quoting discounted notes, due diligence, how to flip a note, how to buy part of a note. You'll learn how to use my special exclusive option agreement, the safe way to do private lending, how to maximize profits on your flip deals, on regular real estate deals, and a whole lot more. And then, of course, I've already told you about the coaching, and here are all my legacy materials that you'll also have access to. Okay, so you are going to get the online academy with all the extra courses and 6 months of coaching. That's well over $20,000 in education. And you can get that tonight for 2 payments of $748.50. Or you can save $200 with just 1 payment of $1297. But to make it even better, I will give you an exclusive rebate, and this is good for tonight. If you close a deal with me, use the easiest 1, 2, 3 coaching, we close a deal within 6 months, I will give you an extra $1,000. So in addition to half the profit out of my half, I'm going to give you $1,000 towards the cost of your course. That's a deal. You are right. You are right. It's crazy. I can show you how to make $50,000 doing notes, and people go, oh, that sounds good. But when I say, I'm going to give you back $1,000, they go, yes, because it's money in your pocket that you know what I mean? And I have to tell you one other thing I want to add on. I spoke with Anna, and I mentioned that I am having an academy. It is October. This is not the online academy. This is a Zoom event, a virtual Zoom event. It is October 19th and 20th. And I do these every year. And this year, I'm doing one. It is above and beyond the basics. It's not just a reiteration of what you learn in the online academy. This is taking it steps further, okay? And that is October 19th and the 20th. And Anna said, will you put together a really good offer for my people? Right? That's what you told me. And so I'm toying around with this, trying to figure it out, and I went, what the heck? I'm driving up here. The tuition, the regular registration, I'm not making this up. It's $1,997, and once I start selling it, which will be this week, the early bird special will be $1,497. That's what my people are paying for it. But if you take advantage of my online academy for tonight only, I'll add the 2 days for $500. That is real $1,000 that you're going to save between now and October 19th, okay? That is really what it would cost you to come later. So that is a real steal. So you have to buy the online academy, okay? And then you can add this on for $500. So you've got 2 offers here, and you can just get the online academy and the 6 months of coaching for $1,297. Or you can do the 2 payments if you want. Or you can get the online academy, the 6 months, and the 2-day event in October for $17.97. It's either or, okay? And I will also include that rebate on both of them. Okay, so whichever works best for you. It is a real deal to get the 2 days right along with it. Or you can just do the academy itself. So I hope this has been enlightening to you. And I want to say that, you know, I believe that everything happens for a reason. I don't think it's any accident that I'm standing up here speaking and you're here. And so I want you to take a look and say, where am I right now? And did you see how this might help you to change your financial situation? Did you see that if you marketed for some notes, you could flip a note and make some money real quick? You know, did you see that maybe you want to acquire property with a non-performing note? Did you see that maybe you could grow your IRA very quickly, even if you're already 55 years old or older? If you need to get money in your IRA, use notes to do it. If that's the case, and you really want to make today the first day of the rest of your life, please meet me in the back, and I'll get you all signed up, and I really hope to work with you, okay? Good night, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. If you have questions, I'll answer them in the back, okay? Thanks so much.